to Oh, yes. Thank you. I first want to introduce Arshay Cooper. Arshay Cooper is a rower, a Benjamin Franklin award-winning author, a Golden Oar recipient, a motivational speaker, an activist, and the co-founder of the A Most Beautiful Thing Inclusion Fund. I am proud to call Arshay a friend. I have heard him speak numerous times. Every time it is extremely motivating, extremely encouraging. And I'm so thankful that Arshay, you've uh, given us an hour of your time today to share your story and your experience with us. Um, we also have Justin Best. Justin Best is a two-time Olympian, most recently making history in the men's four this past summer in Paris. Um, he is, in my opinion, as close to a movie star that ever met in rowing. And I got the opportunity to connect with him and Arshay and Amanda a few weeks ago, and am so excited about the perspective that he has on the sport. So welcome Arshay, welcome Justin, and you guys are the best for doing this. I really appreciate you being here.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it. Excited to be on.
Cool.
seconded.
Awesome. So I'm gonna before I know that Amanda is running a little bit late today. So before we get started with Amanda, I think one of the exciting parts about this conversation is Justin and Arshay are two champions of rowing, and they have different experiences, but they have some similar and interesting perspectives, and so we're really excited to kind of dive into both of their kind of unique experiences, and then also where they come together. But Arshay, can I pass the mic over to you, and can you just do an introduction and help us set the stage for today's conversation?
Yeah, for sure. No, super excited to be on. I know most of you on the Zoom, the ones that I could see. I see Beth on here. I see Gail on here. I see Carl on here. It's just so many amazing people who have been, um, you know, doing this work. I always say that, Arshay Cooper cannot diversify the sport of rowing. U.S. rowing cannot. The Gold Cup cannot, but but rowing has to diversify the sport of rowing. So it is just so many of you guys who are out there every day putting in so much work, sacrificing a lot of personal time to make this sport so accessible. So I appreciate you all, and always good to see that you guys are just so involved. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to the young people we work with, and those who are still in the sport. And again, so excited to be on this call with Justin. Justin just is he's a stud. He's awesome. The first time I met Justin, he was a freshman at Drexel, and I took a bunch of kids to go visit Drexel, and he was stroking I believe the eight at that time, or the four, and we had these like big kids from Brooklyn that was just new to the sport. And it was like, that little guy stroking the boat. And then I guess once they found out what his 2K was, they backed off. So, but that was my first introduction to Justin. And it's so great to see how far he has came from there to now. And amazing young man. And, we have many conversations. And so glad to join him on this Zoom.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Arshay, and again, thank you, Justin. And Justin, I'll pass it over to you. Can you just kind of share a little bit about your journey in rowing, and kind of what you've gotten from the sport?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna have to apologize. My energy is pretty low right now because I'm battling a nice little fever that doesn't seem to go away. So I'm typically not this low energy. I typically try and bring some more, excitement. But my background, I started rowing when I was going into my high school freshman year, and my parents were not rowers. They had no idea what the sport was, and they watched The Social Network, and so featuring the Winklevoss twins, and then they were like, "Hey, see what Justin can do if he's got the same build as the actor that portrayed him." So they Googled rowing clubs in the area, and I was off to the races. It has done so much for me. The people that I've met, the places that I've gone, I've been to these Europe, how about 4 continents rowing: Asia, North America, South America, Europe. I've been to well over 30 countries at this point. And it's pretty special to see what that sport, what the sport brings people together, because we have the commonality. It's the only sport you're quite literally in the same boat. And yeah, so that's just kind of my background, and I was fortunate enough to be recruited to row at Drexel, as Arshay mentioned, and then went for the national team straight out of college. Went to the Tokyo Olympics. Was a little disappointed with the 4th place finish. Said, nope, we're going to do this again. We're going to do it right. So I ended up winning gold in the Paris Games, and it was pretty unbelievable summer.
Yeah, I mean, you were all over every news channel, and there's that one picture of you too on like the shoulder, like the whole, that was just so cool.
Yeah, at the Champions Park. Yeah.
Yeah, so awesome.
Yeah, I know Amanda's not on, but we'll help you drive this thing until she comes on.
Cool.
But, yeah, but I would say this, like, I think that talk about Justin winning gold. I saw Justin a couple months ago in New York, and I told him, hey, listen, we're doing more work in Delaware this year, and and we in Delaware is a pretty diverse state, and and we had time to kind of drive around his community and meet some of the young kids at the surrounding schools there, and he pulled out his phone and told this story that struck me. And this Justin, I think he was 6th grade, maybe. I'll let you tell the story, but he had these 2 tall Black dudes next to him, and they all joined this Learn to Row at the same time. They were definitely giants compared to you. But I would love for you to just share that story with this group, and like, how do we work together to kind of solve what happened in this story. But we'd love for you to tell that story, because I think it's a great story to tell.
Yeah, and I think it kind of speaks to I'll tell the story, but it definitely speaks to kind of like what we're trying to accomplish within the sport. And so I joined this Learn to Row, and I was in 8th grade. So it was the summer, like going into my freshman year. It was like my first week of rowing ever. And there were these 2 twins that came from kind of the northern Wilmington area. And Wilmington is, it's a great small city, but it's also not got the best, public school education. I was born in Delaware, and I went through the public school system there. And my parents were like, my brother got into a fight on the playground, and my parents were like, yeah, we're not going to do that. So we moved over the border into Pennsylvania. So just a little bit of context for that. So I show up to this camp, and we're all taking our first strokes, learning together. And yeah, like Arshay mentioned, these 2 twin brothers were there. They were both like 6'5", and they were like 16 years old. And we were doing 500-meter sprints, and they were going like 136 or whatever. And I was like barely squeaking by at like 148. So they were absolutely crushing me. And I'm like, yeah, these guys are pretty athletic. We're gonna win head of the Schuylkill novice men's 4 event by open water. It's gonna be great. And then we go through, and like I had a great time with them. They seemed like they were having a good time as well. And we show up in the fall, and I go up to my coach, and I'm like looking around day 1. I'm like, hey, where are the twins? And my coach said, they really enjoyed it, but they could not get a ride to the boathouse and then a ride back to their house from the boathouse. And so they're like, yeah, we're just not gonna do it. And kind of like looking back on that, seeing where I've been and what I've accomplished in the sport, and kind of like the journey that I had been along, I was thinking to myself, like, we started in the same exact spot. What would their path have looked like had they had stuck with it? Had they had those ability to go to the boathouse, to go from after school and then know that they can get back to the boathouse or back to their house. I think it's pretty spectacular to see what the sport has done for me, and having that exact reference point, kind of always like, I look back on it now, I'm like, okay, wow, you know, maybe there's a way we can make this work so that kids like that have the opportunity to do the sport, so they like, if they choose. And for me, from a high performance perspective, it's a numbers game, right? So if you want a very, very high end level, you want a large number of bodies feeding into the pipeline. So in conjunction with, like, yes, diversity at the boathouse, but I think also there are great athletes out there that will never have a chance to sit in a boat because of, you know, whatever barrier they face. But if we can drop those and enable that access, I think, you know, you're going to see 8 to 10 years down the line a U.S. national team that looks more similar to the United States, and we're going to be fast. So, you know, having conversations like these, fireside chats, I think sharing this story specifically, I think is what is possible is very evident, you know, and it just takes a little bit of elbow grease to make it make it happen.
Yeah. Justin, thank you for sharing that. And it really, it reminds me of this book called The Other Wes Moore. I'm not sure if you haven't heard about this to the group, please check it out. It's a really fascinating story about these two African American men in I forget exactly what city they were in, but they were
Baltimore.
Baltimore. They had the same exact name, and they had two completely different paths. And it's just a fascinating read. It's a fascinating story. Justin, hearing this and hearing these twins who were in many cases better than you were at the start of this, you know, to kind of see how the paths diverged. And who knows, they may not have rode another stroke in you know, since then, but you have obviously found like the ultimate success in the sport. And so it's just fascinating to see like the starts were the same, and then the paths ended up being different. And you know, why what was it? Was it the, you know, did they not have a fun time? Did they not feel included? Could they not get to practice? What was it? Was it too expensive? Were they just not into it? There are a million question marks that kind of come to my mind, but I think for the sake of this call, these are all leaders at rowing clubs who have the agency to make their rowing programs as fun, as engaging, as connected as possible, and to address the barriers. So anyway, I really appreciate that story, and hearing it is just so fascinating. It's like, what if they had stayed in the sport? Would they have been, you know, in that boat right with you guys, with you? And so anyway. Um, cool. So,
And it's good that I see Amanda's on. Amanda's on. So,
oh,
hey,
great.
Amanda. Yeah.
Okay, Amanda, how's it going?
Hello from Colorado Springs. I am so sorry, all of you. I have the wrong time zone. So here we are.
Colorado Springs is yep. No, I totally get that. We're so glad that you're here. Amanda has been a champion for increasing diversity in rowing for years and years, including starting Row New York and just supporting so many different initiatives in the sport of rowing. Amanda, just to catch you up, we just heard that pretty incredible story from Justin, kind of talking about how he started in his rowing career. It is fascinating and tragic, Georgia. I think like that's exactly how I, you know, I'm kind of wrestling with this too. It's like the question marks of like the what ifs really go through my mind with that story. But Amanda, I will pass the conversation over to you. Amanda's going to be moderating this conversation. So Amanda, the floor is yours, and thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Will, and thanks everyone for being here. What a good turnout. And Justin and Arshay, of course, thank you to you both. Again, apologies. I think my calendar didn't shift over. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'll leave it at that and just jump in. And have been looking forward to this conversation with these two incredible just humans, athletes, humans, members of our community. So it sounds like you guys already got through introductions, but one of the questions that I have a little list, but I'd love for this to also just be a conversation and let it go where it wants to go. But, and tell me if this was already covered, but I always love to hear about when people first set foot in a boat or first saw a boat. So I would love to hear about that from Justin and from Arshay, or was this already covered?
Not the first boat. Arshay, do you want to lead off?
Yeah, sure. You know, I mean, I think everyone pretty much knows the story. The first time stepping in the boat pretty much was, you know, well, seeing the boat was in the lunchroom, and behind that boat, they were showing the Olympic Games. And I think for me, it was watching that television and seeing like these guys just creating the most magical rhythm was something that I can imagine felt really amazing. And I think that, you know, it looked like the most wonderful opportunity. But because no one on the screen kind of looked like me or reflected the world I was used to, I walked away from the opportunity. And at times you can say, oh, why would you walk away from an opportunity? Look what you have, you know? And I think that goes back to just the importance of representation. Now, at that moment, maybe because it is difficult, right? To try to find coaches that look like the kids that you want to bring into the sport. And I think what was cool is that they found a way. Like, number one, okay, pizza, everyone loves pizza. You know, travel, a lot of kids really don't get a chance to travel. Let's put traveling on the schedule, and let's put some really cool uniforms on display. And those three things caught my attention right away. And I think also having a woman as a coach, right? Back then, there wasn't a lot of women coaches at my school in the 90s, and most of us was raised by women, right? Our grandmothers, our mom, and we felt very comfortable with that. So I think that really kind of looking at what are some of the things that the community is looking for and need, especially the young people there, kind of said, okay, Arshay, this still is an opportunity. Let's try it. And so yeah, that was the very first time I seen it bold, and I came back to it because, you know, it answered some of the questions that we had and we was hoping that could be answered for us.
Yeah, I like your story too, Arshay. The first time you physically saw a boat, was it in a cafeteria?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Justin, the first time you saw a boat or got in a boat, what was that like? Do you remember?
Yeah, no, it was pretty cool. We had a Dorigo. I don't know if anyone knows Dorigo is a brand that I think went defunct in the 90s or something. So it was wooden on the interior. And then we had these oars from the Naval Academy that had to have been from like the late 70s or something. And we
Justin
showed up.
Secretly 60.
Yeah. Okay. And so we showed up at this, it wasn't a boathouse, it was a yard. And we had these sea containers that we would take the boats out of because we didn't have a boathouse, and we would walk them like less than a quarter mile down to launch. But it was very cool, like just hopping in and taking those first strokes, and you know, getting to be outside and looking around, and you know, kind of figuring out, okay, what's port, what's starboard, and the okay, don't step in this part of the boat. It was just a foreign experience to that point. I played many sports in my life, but for something so it's relatively simple, the rowing stroke, it was extremely foreign, and everyone was kind of struggling in the same way of like, okay, you got to keep your blade feathered or else you're going to catch a crab. And it was funny, I used to call them or spell them. I saw this post that Facebook sent me a post. It was like from 2012. I called them Rogatas, ROGA TTA instead of regatta. So that just shows how little I knew about it. I had my first regatta, and it was pretty, I don't know, it's just like I fell in love with the sport like kind of immediately, but then also like it just exploded in like the years that I put into it, and yeah, Dorigos, that throw back to those. I don't even know if the boat, like, I think the boat that I first rode
What?
in doesn't exist anymore.
That's great. We should maybe use that coining of regattas.
Yeah. Yeah, feel free. Yeah, I was like, wow, I just didn't even put in the time to Google what like the races were called.
So what do you think of, when you think about rowing, I'd love to know from both of you, and maybe Justin, we'll just start with you. What does it solve for you as an individual? What does the sport of rowing solve for you?
I think it's a great way to get outside and meet new people. I already kind of harped on that, but I think for me, it's almost therapeutic. Um, really drilling into kind of your stroke, and it's the constant trying to achieve perfection, even though you're never going to have perfection, right? You can be really, really good, but there's always like a fraction of a way you can get your blade in quicker. And I don't know, like going out and doing like 24K rows in the single, you just have like it's you versus yourself. And then also like the the camaraderie that comes with it too. So if you're in a pair with someone or you're in a 4-man boat, working together to find that collective, taking the most blended strokes that you can possibly do together. I think that pursuit for me was what was addictive. And I, like I said, it's like therapeutic when I'm out there and it's quiet. Like I'm just thinking about the stroke. I'm not thinking about what's going on at work or, okay, I've like test coming up. It was always like, okay, now I'm thinking about I'm gonna get my blade to the water quicker, or I'm gonna match the timing with the other guy in my boat a little bit better. So that's kind of what does it for me. And definitely have a passion for it, and have had it since like first strokes in the Dorico.
Yeah, I mean, throw it in there in the chat if people want to. I love how people are engaging. If it solves something for you, whether it's you were saying it's being outdoors, it helps people's minds feel better. It feels, people might feel more connected. Thinking about that, Arshay, you can answer what it solves for you, but I'm going to tie in a part 2 to the question, which is you and I talk a lot about, filling our own cups, and making sure that we're doing that too. And I wonder what you do to fill your own cup. What does that look like for you? And you can also tie in what rowing does for you if you'd like.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think just thinking about like the younger version of, myself and, and the guys that I hung out with and listening to just like teachers or, community leaders or maybe the news talking about like the problems that need to be solved in historically neglected communities. Um, how do we get young men to connect with others, right? How, do we help solve maybe some of, the mental health issues in the community, and talk about physical fitness, and environmental state that we live in, it all causes to problems in the community. And I felt like rowing was not an introduction to sports, it was an introduction to all these elements of wellness. So you go from seeing dirt and concrete every day to watering grass, that's an introduction to environmental wellness. Um, it's an introduction to social wellness, right? Being able to be around people every day that have the same goals, that go through the same pain, that have the same dreams, that work hard together. It's an introduction to emotional and mental wellness, right? The fact that it's meditative before it becomes competitive, right? It's rhythmic, it's non-conflict, it's non-combative. You don't, you grow up being chased or jumped or hearing gunshots when you sleep. And sometimes you run the football or basketball, but sometimes it can trigger the trauma, but rowing reduces the trauma. And so I think for me, it solved so many elements of wellness in my life, even, intellectual wellness, the things that you learn and the coaches that you have and the college access. Like, it just does so much for the individual, and for the sport in itself. And, it is a lot of hard work. I mean, honestly, I go to regatta and I see coaches who work so hard and are underpaid, and you have to grind and grit in the same way you're teaching these young people to grind. And coaches are tired, right? They're 6-7 days a week, right, between coaching and administration stuff and raising money and dealing with parents. And we give so much to the sport inside of the boat and outside of the boat. And it is so hard to include ourselves in the sport that we're giving to. It's hard to include ourselves in the world that we're giving to. And, and because of the grit of the sport, there's so many people who are drowning. And the only way we would know if they're drowning is if they drown, right? They quit, they can't do it anymore. So I think was very important, in the same way that we do these trainings on DI or safety, how do we incorporate wellness for our coaches, right? Really teaching people how to take care of themselves in the process. We all understand through the sport that, to really go down our path successfully, we have to have a balance, right? We have to balance the boat. We have to balance the things in our life. And it's very challenging, difficult for me every single day. And by having the people around you that are texting you and reminding you to take care of yourself, and if it's, having a support group weekly with those who are learning to take care of themselves is very important. But it's very hard in the sport, and we don't have a lot of resources in the sport. So I think that including this area of wellness for ourselves and all the training and the work we do is going to be key for sustainability.
So Arshay, how do you fill your cup?
How do I fill my cup?
Yeah.
I think number one, by when you get those letters from young people saying that it's because of you and the work that you're doing, it's being home with the kids, right? And it's really learning, like, one of the things I've learned, and I think some of the people on the call are starting to experience it, is that Anita, the friends, told me, you don't have to say no, just say not now. And, and I think that's that's a big part of it. Just being able to say not now, like I'm going to choose myself this week. It is listening to music and motivational speeches, and taking a trip for yourself, but also being very open and talking to folks about, hey, I'm burnt and tired, and sometimes you just don't want to let people down, but now you have to understand and really just be open about those things, And so I think it's a mixture of all those things that are really now filling my cup. Also being around a lot of you and seeing the work that you're doing, that makes me so happy, and it allows you to rest a little bit, because you're not doing the work of eight people are doing the work now. And so I think that's it's all part of it.
Yeah, that's great. Speaking of wellness, Justin, someone just let me know on the side that you're not feeling well. I'm sorry. And look at you going up.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm like shaking right now.
Oh, God. Justin,
Unfortunately.
do you need to go?
No, I'll be here. I know I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll try not to put you on the spot.
No, it's all good.
Well, actually, I do have a question for you though, Justin, but
Sure.
if at any time you're like, I gotta go, we understand that. We're just talking about wellness. So, but as someone who competed and won a gold medal on the global stage, I want to ask, as such a leader and role model in the sport, how do you see rowing evolving to become more inclusive? And what role do you think elite athletes can play in that? And then bonus points if you can talk to us about why you think it should evolve and become more diverse and reflect the diversity of this country more.
Yeah, I think so. I think just before you had hopped on, my mentality is that the more people you put into the system, the greater outcome you have at the top. So if you have 300 athletes competing for 4 spots, it's going to be way more competitive than just 25 athletes from the Ivy Leagues whose parents, will bankroll them, which is just the reality of it. And I think in terms of diversity, it's partnering with a Most Beautiful Thing Foundation and the work that Arshay is going to be doing at my home club, actually in Delaware. I hope to be assisting in that, where you're going to the schools that who knew rowing was a thing, and you are putting faces to names and bringing a boat into a cafeteria. I think on the ground efforts, taking the extra time on a volunteer basis to do that, I think is absolutely critical. And then I think like another part is if there's a way that we can engage social media, I think there's a great potential for, bringing more light onto the sport and then getting it in front of people who might not have known it. This summer specifically, one of the videos that kind of went viral was a guy commentating on our race, and he knew nothing about rowing. And this was on TikTok. It got millions of views. And he was just giving like live commentary on like how we were walking away from New Zealand. And I think we have the platform and the tools to do that. That's just like one small part of it, I think, is engaging on social media. Faces to names on the ground, day in, day out. I think that's really where the critical stuff happens. And then lastly, I kind of touched on this, is removing barriers. Is, the only thing that an athlete should have to think about is, how hard am I going to pull? When you're in the boat, or they shouldn't have to think about, in the case that I brought up, like, how am I going to get home? Or, is this really like where I feel good? Like, do I feel included in this spot? I think removing all of those secondary thoughts will bring more people into the sport to stick around for the long term. So partnering with those foundations, and United We Row, I think, and then if someone's like not taking ourselves too seriously, that's also true. I totally agree with that. It's like, you have to have fun with the sport at a fundamental level, and the more fun you can bring, the more that kids will stick around through those years. So it's a whole like fact set, and I know that was a really winding answer, but those are kind of my perspectives on it.
Thanks, Justin. And I love what Amy West is saying, both of what Amy said in here. And that brings me to, when you're talking about barriers, right, for young people, especially, Justin, to get involved with rowing and stay involved with rowing. And, I think mentorship is a big part of what has an impact. And I think opening boathouse doors is important. And I'd love to hear what you think. We'll go back to Arshay for a minute. What steps can people, and the people on the Zoom are self-selected, right? So they already have an interest. You're already telling us you have an interest in this work, right? And this opportunity. I don't know that we should call it work. I mean, to me, it's an opportunity. Some of it is work. But what do you think, Arshay, people here can do in their own boathouses to mentor young people who might not feel welcome or seen in the sport on a daily basis? What are the little things or not so little things they can be doing on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, most of these people that's on this call are doing the work. And just, I get to that, just, mentioning also like what Justin was saying, like, for me, I feel like the people who are never on this call, a lot of those collegiate coaches and some of those who are in those the boat houses that that have all the resources. Sometimes, how do we communicate to them who have a lot of resources in this sport? That there is, because I hear so many people in conversation that there is a difference between the barriers, the obstacles that is the path, and then there's the barriers and obstacles that blocks the path. and I think that, you know, a lot of times you hear people say, "Oh, I went through it, I fought through it." You can, you know, you can go through it. Yeah, those are the obstacles. That is the path, right? Just, you know, losing your seat in the boat, you know, injuries, and waking up every morning, you know, having a lack of social life, like that is the path. And I think sometimes they can confuse it with the barriers that's blocking the path, being the only, right? Not only the only kid on a collegiate team that looks like you, but interacting with 90% of them who never even interacted with someone who looks like you, right? Like, again, just talked about like not having transportation or cost. You know, there's just no swimming access in your community, right? So I think being able to get folks to understand that there's a difference between, you know, what is the path and what's blocking the path. And I think finding a way USRowing to communicate that to those who don't want to attend this meeting is just very important. But I think too, what the work that everyone is doing here, they're doing that work. But the mentorship for me, it's, you know, and it took me a long time to even get to this point because it was so busy, but finding your top 5 and teaching them everything you know to mentor the next 5, you know, really learning to duplicate everything that we know, and finding a very effective way to do it. Because sometimes we just have our leadership that we work with, but really kind of finding the leadership under them and bringing them in, right, quickly. You know, and my coach really spent a lot of time with me, and I was able to do a lot as a kid with like Alf and Malcolm and Preston. Like, I took them to church with me on Sundays, but I was just getting so much from my coach, and not everyone gravitates towards their coach in that way, but I did. But it was very important for him to know the position that I was in and be like, "Hey, it's very important that you work with your friends on everything that you're learning from me." And so I think that is a very important piece of the mentorship.
A good trickle down, right?
Yeah.
So you can have all of these other mentors there. You know, someone made a good comment in the chat here about, you know, it's not just about high performance and winning races. And I just want to acknowledge that comment and agree with it. And, you know, people can have amazing accomplishments in our sport, and win at all sorts of different levels. And I always think it's important not to discount the value of someone being in a boat and being a rower who may never, ever, ever win a race, or even come in second or third. And that's really important, I think, to validate young rowers, and not just young rowers, but their experience, that it's not just about being super fast. There's just so much to be gained from being in a boat and being a part of something and being with teammates and moving their bodies. And that should never be sort of overlooked, which I sometimes see happening in our sport. And I don't think that's unique to rowing, but just to remember, right, a reminder to us all, and that there's great value even without medals. So I feel strongly about that one. And I don't know if you guys see that at all too, Justin and Arshay. Obviously, Justin, you're operating in a very different, you can't say to your coach, like, I actually don't see the value in speed.
Well, no, I completely agree with you in that, you know, it is a great sport in that it's anyone can kind of hop in the boat to take it as far as they want to. And I want to highlight, I was not very good at rowing when I started. I was like an 8:05 2K. It was my first ever 2K. So like, I still had a great time. I wasn't winning races. It wasn't like, but I still felt like I was accomplishing something. And you know, yeah, you might not win the race, but there's still many victories that you can take away. It's like, oh, I exercised 4 days this week, you know, or I met new people. I keep going back to that because I think that that's pretty important. But like monitoring the small victories, I think is just as important to like you said, validate.
Yeah, thank you. Someone asked, Arshay, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Isabel asked a really excellent question around, you know, creating a welcoming environment for a more diverse group of junior rowers at a club where some have left because they've experienced racist behavior and microaggressions. I don't think that's unique to your club, Isabel, unfortunately. So any any key things not to do? And I'll add to that, any key things to do.
Yeah, no, that is, yeah, we lost a lot of great athletes. I think number one, it's really, I think all this stuff reflects, sometimes on leadership, like how serious do the leadership take it, right? First thing I will always do with young people, especially, I had this, like when I first moved to New York, I had this giant indoor rowing program. These kids indoor rowed like 4 or 5 days a week. And the first thing we did was we say, okay, what are the expectations for our teams? What are the rules for our teams? And you guys are going to come up with it, right? Like, we will not disrespect women, right? We will accept everyone. We will not, judge people, based on the color of their skin. Like, all these things came from these young people, right? And if you break the rule, you're quitting on yourself. You kick yourself out of the team, right? But I always lay the foundation of, this is what we're looking for on this team. This is what we're about. Making sure that everyone feels warm and welcoming, and making sure that they add to that, right? That's always the first deal. Like, every young person needs to know that the moment that there's a microaggression, the moment that this happens, like, we're going to discuss that. We're going to talk about it, right? So I think that, and they would know, like, if your coach is not about this, right? Be very careful about what you would say, right? And I think that has to be very much a part of our culture, that this is an accepting environment. And I think the leadership, the strongest and baddest girl and baddest guy, fastest girl, fastest guy on the team, when someone walks in and that person who is equipped and trained and by their coach will introduce themselves and show that person, hey, let me help you on the machine, or hey, I want to see you tomorrow, right? That you did a great job today, right? When those people are demonstrating that, everyone else on the team will, right? And so that's what I talked about, like, really working with those who by performance are doing well, and so I think it's really how the leadership work with them. But it's the simple things of just making people feel warm and welcoming and treating them like a human. But again, it starts with our leadership and our coaching, and making sure they're very much a part of that culture. And they also coming up with what we will not do and what we will do by the team, with the team. And so when you say, hey, listen, you had a warning and you did it again and you can no longer be on a team, it just saves problems with the parents. But listen, your son came up with this, and and so I think that's kind of some of the work that we did. And I think it's a part of it. But hey, I would say this, that when you're starting to merge your programs or diversify your programs, there's just some kids who learn a lot of behaviors, maybe from the school they went to and the parents, maybe some of their parents. And, when it's happening, that means you are diversifying the team. That means that you're bringing people together that was so different into one place. And maybe it will happen once or twice, but you have to stop that immediately. You have to address it right away. But that's what happens when you bring people together from 4 corners of the city. And then we become their teacher, we become their coach, not just on the water, but outside of the water. And we change those behaviors, and hopefully they can bring it home, take it home. And so it is something that takes constant work and training, but it's an ongoing process.
I'm just looking at the chart. I love everything you're saying. And just so agree that it's about, I think it comes from the top too, and setting that tone and culture and expectations. And I think also, as the adults in a boathouse, you can make a lot of progress by your own engagement with the young people too, right? And at the end of the day, people just want to be seen, right? And they want to be a part of the thing, whatever the thing is, right? And that might sound sort of cheesy or small, but I think even just, you know, Justin's a new kid in the boathouse, like welcoming him by his name and asking him how, you know, how did he do on that math test? And, you know,
Yeah.
how's his little sister doing? Like just that little connection, it might seem so small, but I think it can go a really long way.
And Amanda, just to
yeah.
add to that, you know, I would say this, and sorry to cut you off, just
Yeah, no.
don't want to miss this point. Like when our coaches came to our school, and they were amazing people, they were, I mean, they didn't totally know what they were doing. They were building an airplane in the air, but it was still the best airplane we've been on. But, you know, we went into this boathouse at Lincoln Park that was like, you know, these private school kids. And then we were there. We didn't know, we started off with 21 Black people. We didn't know that they were going to be there, and they didn't know that we were going to be there. We were in the locker room like, what the hell is, who the hell is this, you know? And I think that when people bring me out to a boathouse that's mostly white and say, now, Arshay, can you come and speak at these schools? And we want to really kind of bring these kids into the boathouse. I said, no, I need to speak to your leadership and your kids first. They need to know the work that you're doing, that like we're recruiting talent from every corner of the city, because that's going to make it faster. Right. And sometimes they don't tell these kids that this group is coming in, and these kids don't know what they're walking into. So being very smart in planning and being intentional about how to properly merge these programs.
Right. And the kids are going to notice. You can't act as, oh, the kids are going to notice. I mean, yeah, we've got to give teenagers a lot of credit. They're going to notice. So better to get ahead of it with, you know, what's happening and what are the expectations. So a question I have for both of you is, if you could give some advice to your own 18-year-old Justin and 18-year-old Arshay, knowing what you know now, what would it be? Justin, you still with us? How are you doing?
Yeah, it's I had a long night, and yeah, but I appreciate you you're bringing the energy up. You're giving me energy. So I feel I guess I would say to my 18-year-old self, you're gonna experience some ups and downs, but you stick with it, and you're gonna experience the ultimate goal. In that, I came from a relatively unconventional rowing background. I went to a small school and then went to a non-top 10 college. I had to fight like kind of tooth and nail to get to where I wanted to be in terms of like the under 23 world championship team, and then ultimately onto the senior team. So there's a lot of time when I was, 18 to 21. I would say it was my angsty teen phase of rowing, where I was I would get frustrated about my development or where I'd been, and people around me. But I think I would like to tell my 18-year-old self, hey, you keep putting the blade in the water and you keep pulling hard and you stay consistent with that, and you're gonna find out it's gonna work out for you.
Yeah, and it did.
Yeah.
Can't picture you as angsty, Justin, but I believe.
Yeah.
Arshay, what would your advice be?
I would say, first of all, Justin, to have a fever, I just I like, you look great. The curl, everything, like you look great.
Thanks.
Like, I look, when I have a fever, oh gosh, you do not want to see me, but you look amazing, my friend.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm wearing this this like bath towel collared shirt because it's comfy and warm. I was like, this is going on.
I would say, just thinking about my struggles, it would be, the hardest thing I ever done was to ask for help. And so I would say, 18-year-old should like ask for help, right? And be vulnerable. And, when you are constantly comparing yourself to others on the machine, when you have negative self-talk, right? When you feel like you don't belong and you're taught to like, be a man, be strong, don't cry about it. Like, your whole life, like that's bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, talk about it, and share with the, your teammates what's going on with you. And so that's, sometimes you learn those things later in life. And, but when you're able to kind of solve those mental things, it just makes things easier in the boat, and makes, the machine go faster. And so just kind of share those things.
Yeah, I think, someone told me a long time ago when I was back in the day when I was actually coaching, and before having my own teenagers, and with boys especially, I think there's all this pressure on young men to, you know, be stoic and just carry on. And someone said that they had read this article from a adolescent psychologist who talked about, you know, young men in sport and outside of sport, they often just will shut the door and say, I'm fine, and shut the door and shut the door and shut the door. And she said, this is a quote that's always stayed with me: put your foot in the door. So just don't allow the full, and I think we try to give that space sometimes to young athletes, and I don't want to generalize, so that I am saying often the male athletes. And so that's always stuck with me, is just like, put your foot in the door so they can't actually shut it completely. And so you're not barging into the room, but you are saying, like, actually, we're gonna keep this dialogue open. And I think that's important for young rowers too. And I wonder, you know, I think this is mostly adults in the space. I don't think we have any junior rowers on here. Maybe we do, and they're not on screen, but actually I think hopefully they're in school, come to think of it. But, you know, what do you think is holding our sport back from better representing the diversity of this country? I know you know the answer. So, and I'm betting a lot of people on this Zoom know the answer too, but if you could name top 3 things, what do you think is holding people back? Because if we don't talk about it and we don't identify it, I think we have a hard time making progress.
Is that for
Yeah.
Justin or
We'll
me?
make you start, because let's
Yeah,
just
I
a
was
little
gonna say,
break. You have some
Okay.
Advil, maybe let's have,
I've been hitting Advil all night. Yeah.
okay.
Maybe I should re-up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, um, I mean, look at the amount of leaders and coaches that we have on, you know, that we have in the sport, and look how many people on this call, you know. I think that is one of the things, right? It's not, I don't see a ton of people. I mean, not all the screens are on, but I don't see a ton of people of color, right? Because they're working a bunch of jobs, right? And can't be on here right now, you know. And what do we do about that, right? How do we solve that problem, right? And also, you know, when I say, sometimes you hear people say, US Raw need to be, US Raw need to be, US Raw need to be, like, you know, I think we have to somehow, and I think a lot of you are, uh, you know, not saying that because you're on this call and you're joining committees and stuff like that. But, you know, I don't know how, but the same way that there is safety training, somehow all these folks that, especially these colleges that our kids are going to, like, they need to hear about the barriers. They need to hear the stories, the microaggressions, the things that young people are going through, and the work that other coaches and the work that we're doing and what we're seeing every day, that it's not just like solving a problem with transportation or driving a van or putting kids on a water, recruiting in schools. Like, some kids just don't have sweats or shorts to work out, right? Like, food is way more important than buying at Hudson, right? For them, and snacks is so important, right? Like, for me, it's information and making sure that these stories are getting out there, and the folks have to be willing to change their mindset and their thought process, and we need to be bold on our anti-racism statements, and you know, and you know, those are just a few things, right? And giving our young people more of a voice, right, to speak and talk and say things in creative ways, that to tell their stories without feeling exploitive, but asking them, like, running our organizations on the ideas of those young people. You know, how do we do it better, right? More from the bottom up, instead of just from the top down. And you know, so I think that that are some of the things.
Yeah, and Myrna, thanks for this comment about the trainings. And, you know, there's been a move even before the most recent election, but there's been a shift in our country, and not, if I can see you and you agree with this, where there's been some pushback on ESG and DEI, and and I've had some people sort of, who I think are wonderful humans, who will whisper in my ear, maybe we should keep doing the work, but just be more quiet about it. And I don't agree with that. I think now more than ever, we need to double down on the work and not sort of be shy about it or rename it. I think it's really important that US Rowing leads with and is proud of the work to make our sport more diverse and more inclusive, and all sorts of other things, but focused on that right now, and not shy away from that. That's my feeling. And I would encourage all of you who agree with that to do the same in your own boathouses and your own communities or in rowing, because there's a lot of pressure now to sort of like, we did that. Now the work, let's be quiet about it. I don't know, Justin and Arshay, what you think of that yourselves.
I think that the sport has offerings to all, and knowing the historical advantages that the rowers of the 1900s had through access to the sport, I think we should make it our best efforts to open it to everyone. And I think it's just a net positive to get more eyeballs, more people in boats. It is such a virtuous endeavor, and I think some of the best people that I know are rowers, because they have gone through the same experience, and they have the blistered hands, and they have the understanding of, I need to put myself in front of my own self-interest so that we can succeed as a whole. So I would say charge on, be loud, get more people into the sport in any way that you can. And where Sarasota Crew has got 160 kids at any given point, just off the top of my head, and it's building and facilitating places like that, that you can just like operate on these huge capacity, and I think that's a positive. So I don't know, I think that keeping on the movement and continuing to champion it is pretty important.
Justin,
Yeah.
I saw you push through New Zealand this summer, and I feel like you just did the same thing
Thank you.
at home in your. So we
I'm
will
gonna go sleep now.
let you off the hook here. And Arshay, I think we're about at time. Is that right, Will? So
we're gonna keep things moving. But Arshay, did you have any final words for the group that you wanted to part us with?
Yeah, no, thank you guys for having me and including me, and it's good to do this with Justin, and thank you guys who, some of you I know, some of you have not met at all, but like, just looking at, folks who are out there, Michael Wyman and Mark Davis and Marna and, Luciana and Marcus, and Flo, and, all of you guys. It's just, I appreciate the work that you're doing. And our country has taught us that, each sport has made a significant impact in the world in some way, but none has entirely reached its goal until everyone's included. The sport becomes more mainstream, it becomes faster, it becomes better, it becomes more competitive, it becomes absolutely amazing on the Olympic level when everyone is recruited. And so, I know this is DEI talk. For me, it's like, let's go into the corners that no one is going to, and let's recruit the kids, right? And let's make sure the boathouse is joyous and competitive and warm and welcoming for them. And let's not give them hope with barriers, right? Let's make sure that they're touching the brand new boats, right? That they're included in the traveling, that they get all the support, that they get to go to the same camps, right? It's not just by equality, but equity, right? Like they're getting access to the coaches, who have been around for a long time, and we'll watch them rise, and so that is what it's all about. And it take all of us. So just keep doing what you're doing.
Cool.
Arshay, thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Amanda.
everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Arshay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you, Chuck.
appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
Yeah, thanks, guys. See you. 3 champions of rowing.